What are shadow men? Well, in short, these pitch-black, white-eyed entities essentially act as the immune system for reality spheres and the reality inside, warding off or destroying things that do not belong in them. An example being creatures or other entities that have somehow made their way into said reality for whatever reason. And to accomplish this, shadow entities come in various forms and ranks, each with their own specialist abilities and weaknesses, which is something I shall now explain. Before I do, I just want to clarify that in this case, we will be discussing the ones just from our reality sphere. Also, all the abilities that these shadow entities have are for facing things that do not follow the rules of our reality, so they may sound overpowered, but in context, this is because what they face is often just as powerful as them, if not more so. Anyway, starting at the bottom rank, we have the standard shadow men. These beings are the most common type of shadow entity in the ranks, acting as common foot soldiers. They are generally the same size and shape as a human, but their bodily proportions may vary slightly. Regarding their abilities, standard shadow men are generally stronger and faster than the average human by about 10 to 15%. They also possess two relatively weak psychic abilities. The first being a rudimentary form of mind reading that allows them to see and hear what something is consciously thinking about. They can also release concentrated beams of psychic energy from heads, often used to cause nausea or headache to scare off reality intruders, but this only works if the intruder is not behind something as the psychic beam cannot pass through walls. They also have a special ability. They can open a hole in space and time, allowing them to move instantly from one place to another or go to and from their realm. And this special ability is not unique to just shadow men. All shadow entities among the ranks possess the ability to do this, except the shadow dogs, which need to be manually taken to and from places by shadow men. We will be skipping this detail in all further elaborations to prevent needless repeating. Next up in the same rank level, we have the previously mentioned shadow dogs. These dark hounds are often seen with shadow men and are mainly used to spot dangers or intruders that standard shadow men would not be able to notice. They are also often used as attack dogs, guard dogs, and sometimes deployed during reconnaissance missions. Appearance-wise, these dark dogs come in a variety of forms, most of the time being shaped like normal dogs, but sometimes their forms will have strange proportions. Regarding abilities, these dogs generally surpass normal dogs in speed, strength, mobility, sensory ability, but by how much varies a lot, depending on the shadow dog in question. For example, a normal-shaped shadow pug may only be a tad bit faster than a normal pug. A shadow German shepherd with disproportionately small back legs might be strong enough to rip through concrete like a tissue paper, but also might be unable to swim. Or a shadow Great Dane might have enough grip strength to climb walls and super hearing, which makes him vulnerable to loud noises. They also have one psychic ability. Shadow dogs, much like shadow men, can release energy psychically to scare off reality intruders. Unlike shadow men, they don't concentrate it into a beam. Instead, they release a powerful burst of psychic energy around them. This burst is powerful enough to cause extreme nausea, vomiting, headache, loss of balance, can even knock a person unconscious with prolonged exposure. But luckily, all shadow entities among the ranks are immune to psychic attacks from other units. Unluckily, this burst cannot penetrate the walls and becomes rapidly weaker the further away the target is. Moving up to mid-rank, we have the investigators. These entities are uncommon and often used for specialist missions, specifically in urban and city environments. Examples being reconnaissance, locating the nests of specific intruder types, retrieving objects that intruders may have left behind, keeping people away from areas with intruders, scaring away intruders, etc. Regarding appearance, they resemble standard shadow men, but are taller, wear a trench coat, and a wide-brim fedora. And regarding abilities, investigators are several times stronger and faster than the average man, have senses twice as strong as a normal person, and free psychic abilities. Those abilities being, firstly, a powerful form of mind reading that allows them to see what something is thinking, feeling, imagining, or even dreaming about, both consciously and subconsciously. But the quality of this reading ability will decrease over distance, so they need to get close for decent observation. Secondly, they can release a powerful beam of psychic energy from their head or hands, but unlike shadow men and shadow dogs, they can control what effect this beam has on what it hits. For example, they can make you run away in fear, pass out, nauseous, happy, calm, angry, etc. But it's a very draining ability to use, and is easily blocked by physical barriers. And thirdly, they can use their psychic energy to filter themselves out of perception, making them essentially able to turn invisible. But this won't hide ripples in water or rain droplets hitting them. Sharing mid-rank with them is the Lurker. Much like the Investigator, the Lurker is tall, but instead it wears a black hooded cloak and is deployed almost exclusively in rural, village, or outdoor environments with lots of foliage, but sometimes in cities if necessary. Lurkers have the same abilities and weaknesses and are often deployed at the same jobs, but with two differences. Lurkers have a fourth psychic ability, the ability to erase memories, which takes a lot of focus and energy to do. They're also the only ones who are sent out to do this job. Moving on to the top rank, we have the Black Guard. The Black Guard are the personal guards of the leader of the Shadow Men in his realm and castle. Appearance-wise, they look like various giant medieval knights and are often armed with either a sword, shield, mace, or crossbow. Black Guards operate almost exclusively in their leader's realm, but will rarely be sent out to deal with serious threats the other ranks of Shadow Men are unable to handle. These guards, ability-wise, are faster, stronger, and more durable than most animals on Earth, have elevated senses, and one swing of their weapon can easily break through concrete with little resistance. And they also have 5 powerful psychic abilities. Firstly, they can fire powerful beams of psychic energy from their heads, much like the Investigators. But unlike them, this beam is powerful enough to overload the entire nervous system to a point where the target's brain and nerves will overload and cook themselves. But they can only fire this beam once every few minutes, just for a few seconds, and it's also blocked by physical walls and it's very draining to use. Secondly, they can release that psychic energy in a blast around them to fry the brains of anything that gets too close in range. But this is also very draining and takes time to recharge. Thirdly, they can become imperceptible like Investigators, but just like them, water ripples and rain are still visible. Fourthly, if they have a crossbow, they can use their psychic abilities to make the arrow follow its target, turn around corners, and even give it a slight boost to punch through walls. But this control degrades quickly and becomes unreliable over long distances. And fifthly, they can use their psychic abilities to lock onto a target and find their exact location, regardless of distance. This requires constant focus and can be lost if they get distracted. Moving on to the highest ranking shadow entity, their leader, known as 𝔖𝔱𝔞𝔯 𝔖𝔱𝔞𝔯 is the heavy-handed, strong, dedicated, often rude but well-meaning leader of the Shadow Men. Appearance-wise, he is a colossal humanoid with 4 eyes, wearing a large horned helmet, metal armor covered in blades, and typically sits on his throne in his castle, located in his home realm, giving the shadow entities lower than him orders on what to do. Regarding abilities, we have no information on exactly how powerful he is, but we do have 2 stories from the Black Guards that give us an idea. At one point, a long time ago, a reality intruder called a 𝔖𝔞𝔩𝔞𝔯, which is basically a gargantuan 6-legged salamander with wings, managed to break down a wall, get into the castle, rapidly rampage through the halls, quickly raid the kitchen, and swallow several Black Guards alive during its rampage. The guards initially tried to cut their way out, but were unsuccessful as the insides of the creature were simply too durable. But at the end of its rampage, the 𝔖𝔞𝔩𝔞 broke into 𝔖𝔱𝔞𝔯's throne room during a meeting with several of his guards and tried to attack him by lunging at him. In response, 𝔖𝔱𝔞𝔯 stood up, grabbed the 𝔖𝔞𝔩 by the face mid-leap and held it with one hand as it squirmed, trying to escape. In less than a few seconds, the creature began to scream in agony as its flesh started to boil and slop off in chunks. A moment later, the creature finally died, and 𝔖𝔱𝔞𝔯 inspected its ruined and boiled body, only to notice movement inside. So he put it on the floor, tore open its stomach with his bare hands, and found the still living swallowed knights inside it. He reached in and pulled them out, saving it from being digested. The second story, however, goes like this. A long time ago, before the previous story, the foundations under 𝔖𝔱𝔞𝔯's castle were rotting away due to another intruder, a fungus called 𝔖𝔱𝔞. The 𝔖𝔱𝔞 fungus glows a bright cyan, grows in a web-like pattern across rocks, and feeds on minerals in the rocks to survive, causing said rocks to crumble to dust. And due to it devouring the foundations of his castle, sections of wall and floor were recessing into the ground, and some walls even collapsed. But one day, things got out of control when a pillar in the main hall collapsed and the ceiling fell, killing and crippling several black guards. Enraged by what happened and having absolutely none of it, 𝔖𝔱𝔞𝔯 got up, separated his castle into multiple large sections by hand, single-handedly moved his entire castle to a new location, section by section, over multiple days, reassembled it, and even redesigned parts of it, all while his black guards were sent to wipe out the fungus and to sterilize all the castle sections before he moved them. So just from these stories alone, it's clear why 𝔖𝔱𝔞𝔯 is the top-ranking shadow and their leader. And with that, that's the ranks of shadow men explained. But before we end this video, I'm sure you have questions, like where did the shadow men come from? What happens after they die? What do they eat? What other things live in the shadow realm? And what are the reality spheres I mentioned at the beginning? Don't worry, those will be explained in the future, but for now, that's it. Also, if you're interested in knowing more about them and the rest of what they're connected to, look at the link in the description. There's a lot more lore than just them. And if you want to see more videos like this, leave a like, subscribe, click the bell, and enable full notifications. And with that, see you next time. Goodbye.